Right now, the National Weather Desk digging out in Buffalo, where the most snow fell and how the region is responding.
The way the lake effect is, you got to pick and choose when you go out. When it's bad, you stay home.
Also, an up-close look at the devastating impact of the drought on the Mississippi River.
Everything starts to back up farther and farther up the river.
And the weather Team USA can expect when they kick off their 2022 World Cup match today.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm meteorologist Veronica Johnson. It was a quiet weather weekend across the nation, unless you live in western New York, and that's this morning's big weather story. It's difficult to imagine 80 inches of snow. I mean, the typical door is about 80 inches high. The average NBA player only 79 inches tall. But 80 inches of snow is just how much snow had fallen now in Orchard Park, New York, a suburb just south of Buffalo. And yes, schools in Orchard Park are closed all week. It takes some time to dig out from that much snow. And because this was a wet and heavy snow, the question is, where do you put all that snow? Let's head to Buffalo, where reporter Polo Sandoval has more.
Just about everywhere you look just south of Buffalo and really in the city, there are reminders that the cleanup efforts after this historic snowstorm, they are far from over. This is a residential neighborhood just south of Buffalo proper. Residents have been working all weekend to dig their way out of their homes, clearing their driveways. The city, the county, they're joining the efforts, making sure that the streets are clear as well. They're also taking some extraordinary steps to not just plow the snow, but also remove the snow. You see this lake effect, frozen precipitation. It's wet, it's very heavy. So according to one city official who I spoke to on Sunday, it's not the kind of snow that you could just sort of plow and leave it there. So they are taking these extraordinary steps by basically using equipment to remove the snow from these neighborhoods and then pile it up high, tons at a time. In some of the city facilities that they have, they say that certainly snow in Buffalo is not extraordinary, but the volume that they received for the last 3 days, it certainly is.
So here are some of those incredible numbers, and all these towns are not around Buffalo. Watertown and Natural Bridge are just north of Syracuse. They also had lake effect snow, but from Lake Ontario, not Lake Erie. Think about this. The peak snowfall, 6 inches an hour, and in Erie, 5 inches per hour. That's Jefferson County. Just absolutely incredible. Well, the snow wasn't nonstop from Friday on through the weekend. There was actually a break yesterday before it started picking up again late in the day. That break allowed some folks to get out to the grocery stores and to stock up.
I have a big list. We always cook for people that don't have, my girlfriend and I. So we invite friends over, and I don't know, I probably got everything I need. My buddy works at Tops up at Sheridan Drive. He's getting my turkey for me, and I'm getting everything else, all the fixins.
It's that time of year, and I need a big turkey to do my special brine and feed my family a delicious turkey.
Others encountered empty shelves and had to go to one more store. Buffalo residents were able to hit the streets because city officials lifted the driving ban Sunday afternoon so folks could get their provisions before another band of snow hit the area. And while parts of the country have seen sizable snowfall lately, drought continues across the upper Midwest. The lack of water there is having just a significant impact on the downstream flow of the Mississippi River. Meteorologist Nick Stewart is in Dubuque, Iowa, with more on how the low water is impacting the flow of goods and how it's impacting your wallet.
It's a quiet form of transportation, a significant mover of agricultural goods, and heavily impacted by the weather. Barge traffic on the mighty Mississippi has been facing challenges all autumn.
Given day, we'll typically unload 2 barges. We can load 2 as well.
Joe Bitter is the general manager at Logistics Park Dubuque. This major hub for imports and exports on the Mississippi River, serving Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Illinois, hasn't had to stop the movement of product, but day-to-day operations are being impacted by record low water downstream, especially south of St. Louis. The way the system works is a delicate dance of upstream traffic from as far south as New Orleans and downstream traffic from as far north as the Twin Cities.
What comes up the river for us is feed ingredients for animals and then the crop inputs, the fertilizer, the dry fertilizer that's used to grow the crops. So the barges are going downriver, taking out the products, and they're bringing up river the inputs that go into growing those products.
The Mississippi River typically moves about 500 million tons of cargo, valued at more than $100 billion. While the water levels locally are lower than normal, downstream, the river is virtually impassable.
Imagine it's like the interstate highway system and something blocks the interstate, only here we don't have off-ramps. Everything has to move through the river. So when there's a blockage, like we had with the groundings south of here, everything starts to back up farther and farther up the river.
You're also having to hold more exports until you have a barge available.
Well, there's only so many barges. They're generally taking products downstream, they're being emptied, then they're bringing products back upstream. When they can't complete that cycle, you start to get an imbalance. And when it's imbalanced, there's not enough barges. Basically, product has to sit, and that's what's happening now.
This pile will eventually be reclaimed to go down the river.
Keeping product and waiting for shipping prices to fall and availability to increase has its risk to farmers, as the market price in the coming months is unknown.
So this is a loaded barge. This has got beans going to New Orleans for export.
The other unknown remains the weather. If drought continues through the winter, there may not be a spring shipping season on the mighty Mississippi.
It's not that I haven't seen it, or Joe hasn't seen it, or our customers haven't seen it. No one's ever seen it this low. These are historic low water levels.
At the moment, I think the impacts have been manageable, relatively minimal. But if it continues, I think the impact is going to be great next spring and into 2023.
Today's the day. For the first time since 2014, the United States is competing in the FIFA World Cup. They take on Wales this afternoon in Qatar. The World Cup was moved from June and July to November and December because of the summer heat just being so brutal in Qatar. So what weather can Team USA expect today? The good news is it's not going to be too hot. In fact, the forecast for the game location is to be around 80 degrees today, then climbing into the mid-80s by the end of the week. In fact, their next match is Friday with a high temperature around 85 degrees. Go USA. Well, at the National Weather Desk, our joy is delving into weather phenomena and natural events. Several episodes ago, we talked about Southern California's Santa Ana winds. Did you know, though, Oregon experiences similar wind events? Let's go to Portland, Oregon, where meteorologist Rhonda Shelby explains.
This pattern forms when cold and dense air dives down from Canada into eastern Oregon, creating an extreme pressure difference between the two sides of the state, separated by the Cascade Mountain Range. It translates into strong east wind at sea level, flowing from high pressure to low pressure. Like the Santa Ana wind pattern, east wind accelerates as it flows over the mountain range and down into the western valleys. But when it encounters the narrowest part of the Columbia River Gorge, just east of the Portland metropolitan area, a sort of wind tunnel forms in the exposed hills, ridges, and communities along the Columbia River. The popular gorge tourist attraction, Vista House at Crown Point, is located right in the area where the wind reaches its peak.
I can't complain too much. It's a beautiful view.
Have you guys ever been in conditions like this?
Not that I can think of, no.
Our cameras ventured up to Crown Point before the hurricane force gusts began, peaking at 94 miles per hour. I'm Rhonda Shelby for the National Weather Desk.
This morning, the NASA Orion spacecraft was just 80 miles from the surface of the moon. It's the first powered lunar flyby on the Artemis mission. After approaching the surface, Orion went into a wider orbit around the moon. That mission, the next step in NASA's efforts to return humans to the moon. That's expected to happen in 2025. Well, a little snow in South Bend, Indiana here didn't stop football on Saturday. This was the scene at Saturday's Notre Dame Boston College game. Burst of heavy lake effect snow made the game one to remember. Fans had difficulty seeing the field at times. Imagine the players on the field having a hard time. Those wind chills, they hovered around 10 degrees for the entire game.